The walls were closing in, tighter each day. Budgets cut. Tools stripped away. Lies whispered in executive meetings. Ethan had watched his once bright office dim into silence, the energy drained by fear and exhaustion. What had once been the sharpest team in Google now looked like ghosts of themselves, talented but cornered, uncertain whether tomorrow their jobs would even exist. Ethan knew the truth. They were fighting for survival, not just success. And survival meant refusing to wait for permission. The spark of defiance. One Monday morning, Ethan walked into the office earlier than usual. He stood in front of his weary team, sleeves rolled up, eyes burning with a resolve they hadn't seen in weeks. "I know you're tired," he began, voice steady but fierce. "I know they've cut us, starved us, sabotaged us. But listen carefully, they think they've already won. They think this office is dead. I refuse to let that happen." A murmur rippled through the room. Ethan paced slowly, letting his words sink in. "They can take Pulse. They can steal our budgets. But what they can't take is the way we work, the speed, the creativity, the fire that no bureaucracy can cage. That's our weapon. And we're going to use it." His team straightened in their chairs, eyes meeting his. For the first time in weeks, hope flickered. The secret project. Ethan unveiled his idea, a project he called Helix. Unlike Pulse, which optimized ads in real time, Helix aimed higher. It would integrate user intent, contextual signals, and cross-platform behavior into a single predictive model. It wouldn't just recommend content, it would understand the user's journey before they even began it. "It's not just evolution," Ethan said, sketching diagrams on the whiteboard. "It's revolution. And if we build this, they won't just need us, they won't be able to exist without us." The catch. They would have to build it in secret. With budgets gutted and access throttled, every resource they used would have to be begged, borrowed, or hacked together from scraps. It would be their underground rebellion inside the empire. Rebuilding morale. The announcement lit a fire in the room. For weeks, the team had lived in fear. Now they had a mission. Ethan transformed their despair into defiance. One developer grinned for the first time in months. "So we're going rogue." Ethan smirked. "Call it unofficial innovation." They laughed, and the sound carried a power no executive could silence. From that day forward, the office lived a double life. By day, they trudged through the projects handed down from above, their creativity stifled. By night and in stolen hours, they built Helix, lines of code hidden under innocuous file names, meetings disguised as bug reviews, prototypes run on borrowed servers. The fire within. For Ethan, those nights became a reminder of why he had chosen this path. Sitting shoulder to shoulder with his team, sketching flows on napkins, troubleshooting until sunrise, this was what had always set them apart. Not the money. Not the metrics. The belief that a small group, free from the shackles of hierarchy, could change the future. It was exhausting. Dangerous. But it was theirs. And as Helix began to take shape, something else grew too, the team's morale. The doubt faded. Fear gave way to determination. They weren't just surviving anymore. They were fighting. The growing risk. But secrecy had its price. Ethan knew they were walking a knife's edge. If executives discovered Helix too soon, it would be branded insubordination, grounds for termination. Worse, it could be stolen before it was finished, just like Pulse. So Ethan tightened his circle, sharing the full scope of Helix with only the most trusted. Still, doubt gnawed at him. Daniel's betrayal had taught him that loyalty could fracture under pressure. Could he be sure that another knife wasn't waiting in the dark? A glimpse of power. 2 months in, the team ran their first full Helix simulation. In a dimly lit office long past midnight, graphs lit up across their screens, accuracy rates double those of existing systems, predictive models aligning with uncanny precision. One analyst whispered, awestruck, This changes everything." Ethan allowed himself a rare smile. "Exactly. When we show this to the world, they'll have no choice but to keep us alive." But behind that smile, he knew the danger had only increased. If Helix succeeded, it wouldn't just save them. It would make them targets bigger than ever. Rising from the ashes. The next morning, Ethan walked into the office to find his team already buzzing, fueled by the adrenaline of progress. The despair that had once haunted their faces was gone. In its place burned the fierce light of a rebellion reborn. They had risen from the ruins, forged stronger by the fire. The net was still around them. The storm still raged above. But for the first time in months, Ethan felt not just the weight of survival, but the thrill of possibility. He looked at his people, his family in all but name, and knew one truth: as long as they had fire, they could never be extinguished. And somewhere in the shadows of Google, enemies prepared their next strike, unaware that the office they thought broken had just become more dangerous than ever. The storm had tried to bury them, but Ethan's office had clawed its way out. Now, after months of secret nights and stolen hours, their weapon was ready. Helix was no longer theory. It was alive. Launching in the shadows. On a Thursday evening, long after the rest of the building had emptied, Ethan gathered his team around a cluster of glowing monitors. The hum of servers filled the silence as final lines of code were checked, rechecked, and locked into place. "Once we flip this switch," Ethan said, "there's no going back. If it fails, we're finished. If it works..." He let the silence carry the weight. A junior developer leaned forward. "Then they can't kill us. Not without killing Helix too." Ethan gave a sharp nod. "Exactly." At 11:47 p.m., he pressed the Enter key. Helix went live. The first sparks. Within hours, the system began weaving its patterns. Unlike Pulse, Helix didn't just react to user behavior, it anticipated it. It knew when someone scrolling through late-night news would be more open to a short video of laughter, when a morning playlist listener was on the cusp of exploring a new genre, when a tired office worker was most likely to engage with an ad for travel escapes. By dawn, test markets were already reporting unprecedented numbers. Engagement spiked. Ad conversions surged. Retention graphs climbed at impossible angles. The room erupted into cheers, high-fives, and tears. In that cramped, half-forgotten office, they had built something that outshined entire divisions. Helix was proof. They weren't just surviving. They were leading. Shockwaves across Google. By the next week, the impact was undeniable. Reports hit executive dashboards. Ad revenue up 20% in test regions. Watch time lengthened. Even partner companies emailed glowing feedback. In the cafeteria, Ethan overheard managers whispering about the Ghost Project. Rumors spread of a tool that had come out of nowhere, delivering results no one could match. Executives demanded explanations. Officially, Helix didn't exist. No budget had been approved. No department had signed off. Yet here it was, outperforming everything else. When the truth surfaced, that it came from Ethan's embattled office, shock turned to outrage. The confrontation. At the next leadership review, Ethan was summoned to present. The air in the conference room was icy, thick with hostility. One vice president sneered before Ethan could begin. "You had no authorization to build this. No budget. No clearance. This is insubordination." Ethan didn't flinch. He tapped the screen, pulling up charts that silenced the room: conversion rates, revenue spikes, user satisfaction graphs. Cold numbers that spoke louder than politics. "Helix has already generated more revenue in 2 weeks than 3 entire divisions combined," he said evenly. "If this is insubordination, maybe insubordination is exactly what this company needs." For a moment, the room was still. Ethan's enemies fumed, their lips thin with rage. But others, those who had doubted him, could not hide their awe. The enemy's frustration. The executives couldn't kill Helix outright. It was too successful. To bury it now would be to bury money itself, and no corporation could afford that. Instead, they tried a new tactic: control. They demanded Helix be handed over, absorbed into a larger division, stripped from Ethan's office. But Ethan had anticipated this. Quietly, he and his engineers had built Helix's architecture in a way that required their expertise to operate. The code was layered, encrypted, designed like a living organism tied to the rhythms of its creators. Without them, it was useless. If the company wanted Helix, they needed Ethan's team. And for the moment, that shielded them. A Pyrrhic victory. Back in their office, the team celebrated. Laughter echoed against glass walls. Someone brought champagne again. But Ethan sat at his desk, smiling faintly, his mind elsewhere. Yes, they had won. They had struck back against the machine and forced it to acknowledge their value. But the taste of victory was bitter, because he knew each triumph only made them more dangerous in the eyes of their enemies. The knives wouldn't stop. They would only grow sharper. The promise. That night, as the office finally emptied, Ethan lingered alone. He stood at the window, the lights of Silicon Valley glittering beyond. His reflection stared back at him, tired, defiant, unbroken. "They'll come harder next time," he whispered to himself. "But so will we." Helix had been their counterstrike, a message carved into the bones of the corporation. We will not die quietly. And though his enemies schemed in the shadows, Ethan knew one truth. He had turned survival into defiance, and defiance into victory. For now, at least, the office still lived. And the war was far from over. Helix had turned the tide, at least for the moment. The executives who had tried to suffocate Ethan's office now had no choice but to keep them alive. The project's success was too lucrative, its numbers too dazzling. For weeks, the office hummed with renewed energy. Developers coded with fire in their veins, analysts worked deep into the night, and for the first time in months, laughter filled the halls again. But beneath the surface, cracks widened. Because power, Ethan was learning, always came with a price. The exhaustion of victory. Helix demanded everything. With resources still limited, the burden fell on the same small team, grinding out long hours without relief. Ethan pushed himself hardest of all, sleeping only in fragments, surviving on caffeine and adrenaline. At first, the team matched his intensity, driven by the thrill of rebellion. But as weeks turned into months, exhaustion crept in. Arguments flared over code merges, deadlines slipped, tempers shortened. One night, Ethan overheard two engineers whispering near the coffee machine, "I can't keep this pace. I'd rather transfer than burn out." The words hit him harder than any corporate attack. His people weren't just tired, they were breaking. The weight of betrayal. The shadow of Daniel's betrayal still haunted them. Ethan caught the glances his team exchanged, the hesitation before sharing ideas. They trusted him, yes, but did they trust each other? Every silence carried an unspoken question. Who will be next? Ethan tried to rebuild that trust, reminding them daily that their strength lay in unity. But deep down, he felt the same fear. Daniel had been his right hand, his brother in arms. If Daniel could turn, anyone could. That fear gnawed at him, even as he smiled and told his team they were stronger than ever. The cost in blood. The first true sacrifice came quietly. Elena, his lead strategist, walked into his office one afternoon, pale and trembling. "I'm done, Ethan," she said softly. I can't keep doing this." He tried to persuade her, reminding her of their victories, their importance. But she shook her head. "I believe in you. But this fight is eating me alive. I barely see my kids. I don't sleep. And I can't shake the fear that one day I'll come in and find we've all been erased overnight." Her resignation hit the team like a funeral bell. Elena wasn't just a strategist. She was their anchor, the calm voice in the storm. Watching her walk away felt like watching the walls crumble. Ethan put on a brave face for the others, telling them she needed a new chapter. But when he was alone, he sat at his desk with his head in his hands, feeling the loss hollow him out. Isolation. The more successful Helix became, the more isolated Ethan felt. Executives praised the numbers but treated him like a rogue element, dangerous and uncontrollable. Colleagues avoided him in hallways, unwilling to be seen too close to someone marked by both envy and suspicion. Even his victories in meetings rang hollow. He would present results that stunned the room, but instead of applause, he was met with thin smiles, clipped nods, and whispers as soon as he left. Ethan had built an empire inside a corporation that wanted him gone. And though Helix had bought him time, it had also made him untouchable in the worst way, too valuable to fire, too dangerous to embrace. The breaking point. The fracture came late one night. After another 14-hour stretch, Ethan returned from a call to find two of his engineers shouting across the office. One accused the other of leaking code snippets to another division. The other fired back, furious and wounded. The argument escalated until one of them quit on the spot, slamming his laptop shut and storming out. The silence that followed was worse than the shouting. Ethan felt the weight of every eye turned to him, waiting for reassurance he could no longer give. He forced calm into his voice. "We don't win by tearing each other apart. If you have doubts, bring them to me, not to each other. We are a team. We survive together or not at all." But as he said the words, he wondered if they were still true. Ethan's doubt. Later, alone in the glow of his office monitor, Ethan stared at Helix's dashboards. The numbers were breathtaking, charts climbing higher, revenues exploding. On paper, he was untouchable. But what the graphs didn't show was the cost. Friendships strained, loyalties eroded, lives outside the office sacrificed. He thought of Elena's pale face, of Daniel's betrayal, of the engineer's slammed laptop. Was this what victory looked like? Was the fight worth hollowing out the very people he swore to protect? A cold truth. As dawn crept through the blinds, Ethan realized a truth he had been avoiding. Helix might save the office, but it could also destroy it from within. The war wasn't just against executives anymore. It was against fatigue, fear, and doubt. The price of power, he thought bitterly, was not paid in money or prestige. It was paid in people. And he wasn't sure how many more he could afford to lose. For months, Ethan had fought shadows. Budgets slashed without reason. Projects stolen before launch. Lies whispered into meetings, turning allies into doubters. He had suspected a conspiracy, but it always felt like smoke, present but untouchable. Now, at last, the smoke took shape. A whisper from an unexpected ally. It began with Maya. She appeared at his office late one evening, the halls empty except for the faint hum of cleaners' vacuums. Her eyes darted nervously as she closed the door behind her. "They call themselves the Circle," she whispered. "Senior VPs, directors, a handful of old guard executives. They meet off books. No agendas, no records. Their purpose is simple: control. No one rises without their blessing." Ethan leaned back, the name heavy on his tongue. The Circle. Suddenly, the chaos made sense. He wasn't just battling individual rivals. He was fighting an entrenched network, a secret council pulling strings behind the gleaming glass of Google's empire. "They've been watching you since Pulse," Maya continued. "Helix terrified them. Not because it failed, but because it worked too well. You've proven a small team can outpace their entire system. That threatens everything they've built." Her words sank into Ethan's chest like ice. He wasn't just a problem. He was a threat to their entire hierarchy. The council's grip. The more he dug, the clearer it became. Patterns emerged in decisions across the company. Promising projects mysteriously shut down, rising managers quietly reassigned, innovators smothered before they grew too strong. The Circle wasn't just targeting Ethan, they were the silent architects of stagnation, ensuring power stayed in their hands. Anyone too bold, too disruptive, too free was crushed before they could challenge the order. And now, Ethan realized, he was at the top of their kill list. A glimpse behind the curtain. The revelation came into sharp focus at an executive summit. Ethan sat at the far end of the table, presenting Helix's new quarterly impact. The numbers were staggering: revenue growth at record highs, advertiser satisfaction soaring, user engagement unprecedented. By logic alone, his office should have been celebrated. But as he spoke, he caught the exchange of glances at the head of the table. Subtle nods, raised brows, a language of silent agreement. It wasn't the data that mattered, it was the decision already made before he had even walked into the room. Afterward, a director pulled him aside, lowering his voice. "You're playing a dangerous game, Ethan. The Circle doesn't like disruption. They'll decide how far you go, not you." The warning was clear. His victories only painted a larger target. Ethan's fury. That night, Ethan walked the empty streets outside the campus, fury burning in his chest. For years, he had believed Google was a meritocracy, where innovation, creativity, and results mattered above all. Now he saw the truth. Merit was tolerated only when it served power. Helix wasn't just software. It was rebellion. And the Circle would do anything to crush it. He clenched his fists, the city lights blurring as determination hardened inside him. If they wanted war, he would not play defense. He would strike at the heart of their power. Planning the counterattack. The first step was knowledge. Ethan began piecing together the Circle's network, who attended their off-record meetings, who carried their whispers into boardrooms, who had the most to lose if his office thrived. Every late-night coffee, every offhand comment, every suspicious delay became part of a larger puzzle. Slowly, the picture emerged, a map of influence that stretched across divisions, projects, even hiring. He realized something chilling. The Circle wasn't just sabotaging him. They were shaping the entire future of Google, suffocating innovation wherever it threatened their control. If he could expose them, even partially, it could shatter their grip. But exposure would be dangerous. A misstep wouldn't just end his career, it could blacklist him from the entire industry. A choice looms. Back in his office, Ethan gathered his team. He didn't share the full truth, not yet. But he told them enough. What we're facing isn't just corporate politics. It's a system built to keep people like us in check. They will try to divide us, starve us, erase us. We can't let them. Some nodded fiercely. Others looked afraid. He didn't blame them. They hadn't signed up to fight a secret war inside one of the world's most powerful corporations. As they dispersed, Ethan remained at the whiteboard, staring at the helix diagram glowing under fluorescent light. For the first time, the project felt like more than survival. It was a weapon. A way to prove that the Circle's control could be broken. The storm ahead. Ethan knew the Circle wouldn't wait long. They had tolerated his defiance too many times. Soon, they would make their move to crush him for good. But he was ready. For the first time, he understood the battlefield. The enemy wasn't just jealousy or sabotage. It was a hidden network, rotten at the core. And Ethan vowed, with every fiber of his being, that he would drag them into the light, even if it cost him everything. The Circle no longer hid in whispers. Their shadow war had dragged on for too long, and Ethan's defiance had grown too dangerous. Now, they came for him directly. The invitation. It arrived not by email, not by calendar invite, but by a folded slip of paper slid under his office door. Tomorrow, 10 p.m. Boardroom 14. Come alone. Ethan stared at the note, heart pounding. For weeks, he had mapped their network, traced their sabotage, pieced together their methods. Now, the Circle wanted him face to face. It wasn't a request. It was a summons. He didn't tell his team. Some truths were too heavy to share. The Circle revealed. At 10 sharp the next night, Ethan stepped into the cavernous boardroom. The lights were low, the glass walls shuttered with blinds. Around the table sat 6 figures, executives whose faces were familiar, but whose power had always been cloaked. One, a gray-haired VP with eyes like steel, leaned forward. "Ethan Tran," he said smoothly. "You've been impressive. Too impressive." Another smiled coldly. "You've proven what we feared. A small, rogue office can outpace entire divisions. That kind of disruption cannot be allowed to spread." Ethan stayed silent, his jaw set. The steel-eyed man continued. "We are offering you a choice. Join us. Helix becomes ours. You become ours. In exchange, your office lives. Your career thrives. You'll have resources beyond imagination. But you follow our rules. You answer to us. And if I refuse?" Ethan asked quietly. The man's smile vanished. "Then we erase you. Your office. Your project. Your name. You'll be a footnote, a forgotten rebel who thought he could defy the machine." The words hung in the air like a guillotine. Ethan's turmoil. Walking back through the darkened halls afterward, Ethan felt the weight of the decision crushing him. The Circle had offered him survival, at the cost of his soul. If he joined them, his team would be safe, their work preserved. But Helix would be twisted into another tool of control, stripped of the very freedom it had been built to embody. If he refused, the Circle would come for him with everything they had. Budgets, access, reputation, everything could be destroyed. And his people, the ones who had followed him through fire, might be collateral damage. For the first time, Ethan questioned whether his defiance was bravery or selfishness. Was he fighting for innovation, or for his own pride? Confession to the team. The next day, he called his team together. They gathered in the cramped office, eyes tired but loyal, waiting for direction. Ethan hesitated, then told them the truth. About the circle. About the ultimatum. About the stakes. Gasps filled the room. Some were furious, others terrified. One engineer spoke first. "If you join them, we lose everything we stand for. If you fight them, we could lose everything we've built." Ethan nodded, his throat tight. "I can't make this choice for all of you. If you want to walk away, I'll understand." No one moved. Finally, Maya spoke. "You once told us we're not just here to make money. We're here because what we do matters. If you give in to them, that ends. I'd rather go down fighting than live as their puppet." One by one, heads nodded. The office, fractured by fear only weeks before, now stood united again. Ethan felt a surge of emotion he hadn't let himself feel in months. He wasn't alone. Whatever choice he made, they were with him. The decision. That night, Ethan sat alone at his desk, staring at the glow of Helix's dashboard. The graph soared higher than ever, living proof of what his team had built. Proof of what freedom and creativity could accomplish when unchained. He thought of Daniel's betrayal, Elena's resignation, the exhaustion carved into his people's faces. He thought of the circle, their cold eyes, their promise of power laced with chains. And finally, he thought of the vow he had made from the beginning, that this office would never die quietly. By dawn, his decision was made. The beginning of the end. The following day, Ethan drafted his response. It wasn't polite. It wasn't careful. It was a declaration. Helix belongs to the team who built it. We will not surrender it. We will not surrender ourselves. If you want to erase us, try. He sent it not just to the circle but to the wider leadership network. He made his rebellion public. The reaction was immediate. Some executives were stunned. Others enraged. The circle's control had never been challenged so openly. Ethan knew what was coming. The storm he had felt gathering for months was now upon him. But for the first time, he felt strangely calm. The choice was made. The line was drawn. Whatever happened next, his team would face it together. And as he looked around his office, small, battered, but unbroken, Ethan knew this was no longer just about survival. It was about legacy. The moment Ethan hit send on his declaration, the war became open. The circle no longer lurked in shadows. They came with everything: resources, influence, the full weight of the machine. The final strike. The assault was swift and ruthless. Budgets were frozen overnight. Projects were reassigned. HR sent notices of departmental restructuring. Within days, Ethan's office was slated for dissolution. Executives publicly denounced him, painting him as reckless, insubordinate, a rogue leader who endangered the company's stability. Internal memos leaked to the press. Headlines called him the maverick who defied Google. Yet even as the circle tried to erase him, Helix refused to die. The system had grown beyond Ethan's office. Advertisers loved it. Users engaged with it in record numbers. Killing Helix outright would mean admitting the company was willing to sacrifice billions just to silence one man. The circle's dilemma was clear. They needed Helix, but they wanted Ethan gone. The stand in the boardroom. It all came to a head in a final boardroom confrontation. Ethan was summoned again, this time not by secret note but by official order. The entire leadership council was present, faces grim, voices clipped. Helix will be absorbed into the product division, the chairwoman announced. Effective immediately. Your office is disbanded. Ethan's chest tightened. Around him, his loyal team shifted uneasily, rage in their eyes. He rose slowly, his voice calm but unyielding. Helix exists because of how we work: fast, small, free. Tear us apart, and you kill the very thing that made it possible. The chairwoman's gaze was cold. That is no longer your concern. Ethan glanced at his team. He saw the exhaustion, the fear, but also the fire. He thought of everything they had endured: betrayal, sabotage, sacrifice. He would not let their struggle be erased. If this is the end, he said quietly, then let the world know the truth. The reveal. In one motion, Ethan pulled out a tablet and connected it to the projector. The room lit up, not with charts, but with documents. Logs of budget sabotage. Leaked emails plotting his downfall. Proof of Daniel's betrayal orchestrated by the Circle. Screenshots of shadow meetings. Gasps filled the room. Executives shifted in their seats, eyes widening as the evidence scrolled by. "This," Ethan said, his voice carrying across the stunned silence, "is the network rotting this company from the inside. You can dissolve my office. You can erase my name. But this truth is now beyond your control." Even as he spoke, notifications buzzed across phones and laptops. Ethan had already sent the files to journalists, to watchdogs, to key partners outside the company. The Circle's secrets were out. The collapse. The aftermath was chaos. News broke within hours, a secret cabal inside Google exposed, accused of stifling innovation, sabotaging internal teams, consolidating power. Public outrage flared. Investors demanded answers. Some executives resigned within days, others faced internal investigations. Ethan's office, however, did not survive. By official decree, it was dissolved, scattered into other divisions. His title was stripped. His badge deactivated. He walked out of the building for the last time with nothing but a box of personal items and the quiet support of those who dared to shake his hand. The legacy. But outside the walls of Google, Ethan's story spread. Articles painted him as a rebel who stood against corporate rot. Employees across Silicon Valley whispered his name with a mix of awe and fear. And Helix. It lived on. Despite every effort, the company couldn't kill it. The system had become too valuable. Even stripped of his office, Ethan's creation remained the backbone of Google's ad empire. In coffee shops and co-working spaces, young entrepreneurs began citing his fight as inspiration, proof that even in the heart of giants, one small team could shake the ground beneath them. Epilogue. Months later, Ethan sat in a quiet cafe overlooking the bay. No suit, no badge, no boardroom battles. Just a man with a laptop, sketching ideas on a blank page. He thought of his team, scattered now, but bound forever by what they had built. He thought of the Circle, wounded but not gone. And he thought of the fire still burning inside him, the belief that creativity and courage could change the world, even against impossible odds. His phone buzzed with a message from an old colleague. "There's room here if you want to build again. We believe in you." Ethan smiled faintly. He had lost his office, his title, his place inside the empire. But he had won something far greater, a legacy. Because in the end, the Circle could erase his name from their systems, but they could never erase the truth. And somewhere, in the glass towers of Google, executives still whispered his name with unease, reminded that once, a small office led by a young man had become the heart of the company and nearly tore their empire apart.
Thanks for watching.